Hello everyone, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. I am Arif, your cloud learning journey partner. So today's video is special. In today's video, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna log into AWS console, and from there I'll explain AWS VPC, which is stand for Virtual Private Cloud. So after today's video, you'll be able to explain all the small nitty-gritty details related to AWS VPC. You will be able to create a VPC from scratch. Before starting the video, I would like to talk about my experience. Well, I do have more than 8 years of experience in cloud computing, specifically AWS. Also, I have vast experience in cybersecurity. But so far I have achieved more than 5 AWS certification. You can see my certification in the background. So after today's video, once you are done with today's video, you will be able to answer any questions related to AWS VPC. So without further delay, let's get started. I have logged into my AWS account, and from the search menu, if I type VPC, we will see the VPC button in here, and we'll click here. So now we are under the VPC console. Before dive into VPC section, I would like to talk about the regions. So here you can see under AWS we got multiple regions, and each and every single regions we will get one default VPC. So for every regions we will get a default VPC, and we can create multiple VPCs under this region. So how would we know this is a default VPC? Under the default VPC section here, you can see this one is listed as a default one. Okay, so in today's video, what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a VPC from scratch. In that way, it will be easier to explain each and every components that are necessary to understand for the VPC section. Here we can click the create VPC button. So resources to create. Now we do have two options. We can create just only VPC and VPC and more. So VPC and more, it will create the subnet, the route table, and the network connections and everything. But we will go through that process later. So we'll only select the VPC only, because we want to create each and every section by explaining. So let's call it test VPC. And now we have to define a CDR block. So this is a networking term, and for that this CDR block, if I want to explain easier way what is CDR block, so let's think you have a large bar of chocolate, and you have divided each bar into multiple pieces. So when we're talking about the big bar, it's called the CIDR, IPv4 CIDR. It's a big bar, and the small chunks we can refer it as a subnets. We will create the subnets later. So here, when we are talking about IPv4 CIDR, so here we're defining how big our chocolate bar would be. So in our case, I'm gonna type 10.10.0.0.0/16. Okay, and IPv6 CIDR block. For this tutorial, let's skip IPv6 CIDR block. We will just focus on IPv4 CIDR block. And the tenancy, so here we have two options. One is default tenancy and another is dedicated. In AWS or any cloud provider, when we choose the default tenancy, that means a shared resource. It's a pool of resources. But if we are dealing with very sensitive data, like a government project or maybe a banking information, in that case it's better to go with the dedicated option. But the problem with the dedicated option is that you have to pay extra for this premium service. So for just this tutorial, I'm gonna go with the default one. And tags, we can add tags. So tags are pretty much like the labels that will help us to identify our resources. So by default, one tag is created. The key is name and the value is test VPC. So pretty much the name that I provided to that VPC is used as a tag value for this VPC. So if I click create VPC, it will just create the VPC, no other additional resources related to it. So this is our goal. So after creating this VPC, then we'll create each and every component one by one manually. So within a few seconds, now we can see we do have a new VPC. If I list the VPC in here, now we can see we do have two VPC. Previously we had one default one. Now this is a customized one that we have created. So now we have created a new VPC. Now we will go to the next step and create some subnets, because we can't deploy any resources in the VPC if we don't have any subnets. So we have to go to the subnet section. Here we can see that we already have 6 subnets, and all the subnets are a part of our default VPC. Here you can see. And one more important thing here to mention is that a subnet can be 2 types. One is public subnet and another is a private subnet. How can we make a private and a public subnet? The only difference between a public subnet and a private subnet is internet gateway. So if an internet gateway is attached to a subnet, that means it's a public subnet. What does it mean? It means that we can access any resources under that subnet from anywhere, from internet. But if it is a private subnet, we can't access it from the internet. So before going to this internet gateway, let's create a few subnets under our newly created VPC. So for that, we have to click create subnet, and here we have to select the VPC. We already have one VPC, that is this one, test VPC, and we need to give it a name. So I'm gonna call it public subnet. I want to make it as a public. So we'll create 2 subnets, one public and one private subnet. Okay, and availability zone. So here, whenever we create a subnet, we need to define in which availability zone we want to create. So what is availability zone? Well, availability zone is a sub part of a region. So region, we can, for an instance here, if we click here, we can see we do have a lot of region in here. So under each region, we have another subset that is called availability zone. So region is the primary, and then the availability zones are the subsection of regions. So here let's choose US East 1 for this public subnet. So here now we have to define the CIDR block. So this is also a networking term. So whenever we create a CIDR block in here, our CIDR block of our subnet should be smaller than the VPC CIDR block, because remember I talked about a chocolate bar. So when we will divide a chocolate bar, the chunk would be smaller than the complete bar, right? So this is the same analogy that we can use to understand the subnet size. So I'm gonna type 10.0.0.1 slash, let's go for 24. Okay. And now this is also creating default tags. That's really fine. And let's hit create subnet. So now we do have one subnet. So as I chose CIDR block /24, now my available IP address is 251. If I typed CIDR block /20 like the default subnets, then we're gonna get 4091 available IPv4 addresses. So this last 2 digits really helps us to actually determine how many IP address that we're gonna get for each and every subnet. Okay, so this one is named as public subnet. Now I'll create another one as a private subnet. Everything will be the same. Just when we'll attach the internet gateway, that will define which one is public and which one is private. So I'm gonna name it private subnet. So I'm gonna choose another region for it, that is US East 1B. And for this, I'm gonna choose 10.0.0. uh, 2/24. One important thing to remember in here, we can't have the same IDR block, a CIDR block for two subnets. Then it will be called as a overlapping. It can't happen because it should be identical in the VPC domain. So if I click create subnet, so here you see I get an error in here. That is this one CIDR block overlaps with the existing subnet CIDR block. Okay, so in that case, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use this. So we have quickly demonstrate like why shouldn't we use the same sort of like CIDR block for our subnets. Okay, so now we do have a public, we have a private, and here we can see both have available IP addresses of 251 so far. After creating the subnet, let's look into the route tables. So by default, whenever we create a VPC, a route table is created. So for that reason, we already have a route table. So if I click this route table ID in here we can see that this is attached to our public and private subnets, both under our newly created test VPC. So it defines how traffic will flow inside the VPC. Okay. And if I go to the internet gateway section, here we only have one internet gateway, that is for our default VPC. So what does it mean? That means the subnets that we have created so far, these two subnets are private because we don't have internet gateway attached to our VPC. So let's create an internet gateway real quick. So we have to click create internet gateway. We have to give it a name. I'm gonna call it test internet gateway, and let's create an internet gateway first. So here we do have the internet gateway, but the state is detached. So we have to attach this internet gateway with our resource. So here attach to VPC, and here we have to select which VPC we want to attach to it. And we have to select test VPC and now attach internet gateway. So now these subnets that we have are both public subnets because these two subnets are attached to the route table and the VPC, and the internet gateway is also attached to the VPC. So in order to make the public and private subnet, we need actually two route tables. We'll attach one route table to one subnet, and the internet gateway will be attached to that. And in another route table, there won't be an internet gateway. In that way, we'll differentiate between the public and private route table. Okay, so this one is a test VPC route table that was created automatically. So we'll use it as a public route table, public RT. You can name it as you want. Now I'm going to create a second route table, private RT. Under the VPC, I'm going to choose our test VPC, and I'm going to click create route table. Okay, so far both public and private route table are same. So how should we make the difference? So the routes. So this one, the public route table has this rule that's the destination. So 10.0.0.0/16. So remember, this is the CIDR block of our VPC. So target local, status active. So that means any traffic inside this VPC can communicate to each other locally. So far, both public and private, both route tables are private in nature because it doesn't have any internet gateway attached to it. So as I have planned to make this one as a public route table, so I have to edit routes. I have to add one more route, and I will choose this. So whenever we choose this option 0.0.0.0/0, that means all traffic from everywhere. And target, here we will choose the internet gateway, and we'll have one internet gateway, and we can save this. So what does it mean? It means any traffic can be passed to the internet gateway that will help us to communicate with the internet. So that means now this route table, public route table, is a public in nature. And now I'm gonna do one more thing, the subnet association. So subnet without explicit association. So here we can see two lists of our subnet, public and private. So I'm gonna edit this subnet association, and I'm gonna add this public subnet under this public route table, because our ultimate goal is to have all the publicly accessible resources under the public subnet, which can be accessible from the internet. And for private, I'm gonna go to the subnet association, and under edit subsection here I'm gonna choose private subnet and save associations. So now we do have a VPC with two subnets, public and private. We have internet gateway that is attached to our subnet, public subnet, and we have a private subnet which has just a local connectivity. So now the question could be why we need a public subnet and a private subnet. Okay, let's think about a web application, for instance Amazon website. So for that we need a web server that should be deployed in the public subnet, so that you all can access that web server. But why we need the private subnet? Well, the web server should be in the public subnet. That's a very good practice. But the database where the Amazon will have all the important data shouldn't be in a public subnet, because if it is in a public subnet, then it can easily be attacked, and it can be compromised. So for that reason, we should create our database in a private subnet. So how we can make this work? So well, it is called a two-tier application. So our public resources in a public subnet, private resources means the database in the private subnet. So whenever we visit a website like Amazon and click for a product or need to have access to a database, then the request will be gone through the public subnet web server to the private subnet database. So in this way is a secure, because the web server is communicating with the database in a private endpoint. I have tried to keep this video short and just only explain the very important stuff that is required to understand VPC. So after watching this video, you will be able to create a VPC from scratch, and you can explain what is VPC, what is subnet, what is internet gateway, what is route table. I have tried my best to actually explain these things very straightforward and easy manner. If you have any questions or any sort of queries related to this AWS VPC, please feel free to send me a message under this comment section, and I guarantee I'm gonna reply back in a very short period of time. I will cover each and every AWS service very briefly, and help you to understand AWS, how it works, how can you use multiple services, and also I'll help you to actually pass AWS certification. Well, I have previous experience of teaching AWS services, because I used to teach online as a freelancer. Please like and subscribe to my channel for watching videos like this in regular basis. I'm planning to upload videos in a very frequent manner. Well, my mission is to actually share my knowledge that I have learned throughout my journey. So I want you to actually become a very good cloud engineer, very good cybersecurity expert. If you want me to cover any specific topics, please feel free to let me know under this comment section, and I will create those videos in next time. That's all for today. Thank you for watching my videos. It means a lot, and have a great and wonderful day.